content is for informational purposes only. You should never construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained on here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by Draper, Goren, Holm, or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever. And we have a very dedicated media partner, Blockchain Radio. So be sure to catch the recording of Blockchain and Booze on his network. And you can also catch it on our YouTube channel afterwards. And I'm very excited because we have a really cool panel here. We're talking all about DAOs today, decentralized autonomous organizations. So I kind of want to get the discussion rolling. I'm hoping everyone can kind of introduce themselves, starting with James. We can go from John, Marco, Nish, and Ivan. So give us a little brief about yourself. What do you guys do? What's your project? What's your DAO? And we'll kind of go from there.
Perfect. Yeah. So hey everyone, my name's James Waugh. I'm based in New Zealand. Previously had been based sort of on the Ethereum circuit, but obviously with everything going on at the moment, I'm hiding in the corner of the world. I have been involved in the MetaCartel community from sort of this time last year, I guess, about a year, which is most of its existence. And subsequently, I've been involved in spinning up a lot of DAOs, both for sort of token projects as well as sort of community first DAOs. More recently, we've sort of launched fire emoji as a DAO, and we're working with a lot of the sort of top token projects, working out how we can sort of, decentralize the control of the sort of decentralized of that governance, right, of that token governance, rather than just be sort of the team top down. How can the community, we know that we're not the smartest people in the world, and we know that any given team isn't the smartest people in the world, right? So sort of how do we find the person sitting in the corner of Poland that actually has better ideas than all of us, right? And sort of how do we build governance frameworks to enable that? So yeah.
Cool. Welcome. Thanks, James. John?
Hi, I'm John Kelleher. I work at Level K, which is a small company I started with a couple of friends a few years ago out of Boston. I moved to Texas the last year. And lately I've been very busy with DXDAO, which is DAO that got launched almost a little over a year ago. Has like a large number of member addresses. It runs a few products. And yeah, really excited about DAOs in general, really pumped about decentralization and governance and doing on-chain governance and finding ways to scale and become more and more decentralized. So excited to be here.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Marco?
Hi, I'm based in the Cayman Islands, formerly from Toronto, before that France. I've gotten involved with the DevDAO as of the beginning of this year, which is when the formation really happened. And I'm now the finance director for the ETA, which is the Emerging Technology Association, a non-for-profit, tax-free Swiss association that represents DAOs. Obviously, the first DAO it'll be representing will be the DevDAO, but we're building the ETA's infrastructure in a way that will allow it to service any DAO and act as its legal footing in the real world, which is a bridge that always needs to be handled within the DAO space, at least now.
Cool. Very cool. Welcome. Welcome to Blockchain and Booze. Nish?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nich. I'm currently based in Thailand. I've been in the Ethereum space for a while. Started out as a community management events, planning, doing hackathons and stuff in Thailand. I'm from Metagamma Delta, which is a society of people trying to support and fund women-led projects in Web3. So we started out at ETH Denver this year. So we're a few months in now, and we're at almost about 40 members, and it's just been great meeting people from the DAO space, especially great women working in Web3. And outside the DAO, I work for an NFT project, or I'm a co-founder of an NFT project looking to fund wildlife conservation. So I do some smart contract development there as well.
Very cool. And Ivan?
Hey everybody, my name is Ivan Sucharski, known in the DAO circles as Ivan Thinking. It's my punk rock DAO name. I'm a social psychologist by training, a technologist throughout my life. Worked for a couple big boys like Microsoft Search and Nokia, done some startup stuff, but always kind of in the data space. So how do you quantify behavior, and how do you take qualitative information and make it quantitative, and how do you present that information to other people? So an analyst, a data scientist, and other fun things. Today I'm the head of research for a project called Deep DAO.io, and we see ourselves as the information hub for DAOs and a discovery engine for DAOs. So today we are going and pulling things from the Ethereum blockchain and about DAOs, proposals, voting behavior, membership, etc. We are very soon moving also to off-chain information as well, and want to start merging all that together, again, in this kind of discovery context, so that as DAOs become more popular and used in so many different ways, whether it's for financial purposes or for creating products or for creating community, that DAOs are discoverable and kind of able to be interrogated, and data can be surfaced.
Cool.
So that's what we're up to.
Welcome. Cheers, everyone. Blockchain and booze. You got to have your drinks, and cheers to the audience. And take a quick sip. I'm drinking a very easy drink because I have a long night ahead of me. I'm drinking a seltzer. So without further ado, all right. So today we're talking all about DAOs. And actually, before I even get into it, for everyone who's joining us for the first time or is a reoccurring participant of Blockchain and Booze, make sure to ask your questions in the QA. Drill it out. We'll bring you up on stage. We'll announce your questions at the end of the discussion. So make sure to write them out down there. So, okay, we're talking all things related to DAOs, okay? And we have a mix of an audience, okay? Especially those that will be listening afterwards. I want to start by getting a very easy, clear-cut, one-sentence definition of what a DAO is. And I want you to explain it to me as if I'm a 5-year-old, okay? We'll start with James. And we'll kind of go down the road. And it has to be one sentence.
Okay. How long?
Sorry, James.
No, I think realistically, like it's a coordination mechanism using sort of the new blockchain and sort of distributed ledger technology that we have, right? We sort of got that as a test case, and now we're building coordination mechanisms on top.
All right. If I'm a 5-year-old, I'm going to be asking you way more questions.
Sure.
But we'll give John a shot.
I'd say it's a big group of people that is distributed, that is operates together, but doesn't need any like boss or person in charge. We'll continue to operate as people come and go without a single leader or central point of control.
Okay. Marco, what's your take?
There are so many ways to do this. There's no way to do it in one sentence. So I'm going to take a metaphor.
You have to. Okay.
It's a corporation. It's a corporation where every shareholder has a part in every decision.
Okay. Fair. Nich?
It's a way to get humans all around the world to be able to coordinate with each other, make decisions in terms of governance, and also how we use a common pool of resources.
Okay, good attempt. And Ivan, last but not least.
A DAO. What are DAOs? DAOs are organizations that allow different disparate groups to collectively make decisions, whether those are about behavior or monetary or otherwise.
Okay, good.
I know that wasn't so
No,
great.
hey, I think when we combine all 5 of them, I think we get a good understanding of what they are, okay? But I kind of want to take it back for a minute, right? I want to talk about the history of DAOs, okay? And I'm going to throw this question, and I encourage all of you, whoever wants to take a stab at it, just jump right in, okay? What drove the birth of DAOs, okay? How long have they been around, and what was that core belief that made someone say, okay, there needs to be some form of decentralized organization making decisions and a group of people making decisions? Was it a belief that, for example, the democratic processes are broken in today's society, or that monetary systems need governance? What triggered this new movement of DAOs?
Want to start with
and we can start with James. We can start. Yeah, we can start. Go ahead.
I mean, I can say when I first.
Really starts with
I think I remember when I first like heard the concept. I think it was at like a Bitcoin conference in like 2015 or 2014. And I think like at the time it was just people kind of imagining these like crazy ideas. Like I think the example was you could imagine a network of autonomous vehicles that literally operate on their own, right? Like they actually make money, and that money goes in through the blockchain over the internet and funds the vehicles to go to a repair shop and get, and like without really having any people in the loop on that system. And it's just the autonomous part is that it just runs without intervention by people, right? And it's like this organized group of cars. So it's just kind of this like crazy idea that I think was appealing. And to me, it's just, I think this kind of came out of blockchain, right? So like, I feel like it started once people started thinking about how you can use blockchain to coordinate people.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I agree. And I think really like that, sort of obviously the DAO in 2016 was sort of the big first attempt at that. There was, for those that don't know, there was one giant DAO that had, I think, 15% of all ether in it. So at today's valuation, that would be, billions and billions of dollars. And then the thing blew up, right? And we sort of got PTS DAO for a couple of years, and it took a few years to sort of really like take the steps back into the ecosystem. But, I think realistically what DAOs are is it's the human element of smart contracts, right? Programmable money is great, but sort of how do you upgrade your programmable money, right? How do you make decisions with programmable money? That's where the actual, humans are needed to sort of make decisions and participate in these different systems. And so that's sort of, I think, where they came from.
Okay.
I would come from the opposite angle, and that is that I think that the original question that you asked was a little bit loaded because it suggested that DAOs are new, right? And I think the concept is thousands of years old. This idea of people being able to come together and intelligently make decisions and have a record of it, right? And participatory governmental methodology. And I think that what's really happened is that the blockchain technologies, particularly smart contracting, has allowed for that to be a little bit easier, right? So it takes away some of the control that humans have had that can be pretty easily corrupted. Whether it's hiding records, whether it's fudging records, whether it's making decisions behind closed doors. And I'm not saying that those things don't happen with DAOs exactly, because they're not perfect. But here was a tool that finally allowed kind of the next step, the next phase of human connection to occur and governance to occur. And the beauty of it, I think the extended, like the bonus part of it, is that because it's on-chain, the permanent record, that's huge. And also because of the way that DAOs are run, anybody from around the world can be empowered to be part of a DAO. So the information asymmetry that's a traditional source of power has kind of been turned on its head with things like blockchain technology. So now that's a couple different things kind of merging all together. But I think this is a very old human problem. And this is just a technology that allows for us to really tackle parts of that. Now, not the whole thing, because there's still a human mess that comes into it, which I'm sure we'll get into during this. But being a social psychologist, I can't help but think of everything with that kind of the weight of humanity kind of in it. And I love these tools, but I'm really curious to see and hear the rest of the people talk about DAOs also from the human angle, because we're running into some interesting problems there. And did right out of the gate. I mean, the original DAO was hacked, not by a white hat, right? So.
Interesting. And I see you nodding your head a lot. Did you want to add to that?
I agree with everything that Ivan said. Human coordination is an age-old problem, and I'm actually a part of a DAO called the DAO Book Club, which is looking at the history of just problems of human coordination, right? So right now we're reading the Federalist Papers, which is written by the founding fathers of the United States to ratify the Constitution, and we're seeing a lot of parallels between what the problems that they were trying to solve then, and also the problem that we're trying to solve today with coordinating a bunch of humans who don't necessarily trust each other, who are located around the world, who have different interests. So I think DAOs in the context of Web3 and blockchain is just a bunch of organizations that is leveraging this new technology that has that verifiability and immutable component that makes things more difficult for someone to cheat, essentially. And just being a part of a DAO for the past year or so, I have experienced that sort of firsthand. Despite the fact that there's this technology that makes things easier, there's still the off-chain component where just because you don't have a leader doesn't mean that no one is accountable, right? So that's a distinction that I've found.
So all of you guys are part of DAOs right now, right? And you guys are all contributing your own respective piece. How do you actually measure the health and the good governance of a DAO, right? I read that there's a KPI, for example, like assets under management. And while that might not necessarily mean a healthy DAO per se, right? What kind of KPIs do you guys look for to determine, okay, this is a proper working DAO. It's well oiled. It knows what's going on. There are a lot of people contributing. What do you guys look for?
I think it completely depends on what sort of DAO it is. I mean, I think if you're looking to raise an investment fund DAO, then assets under management is probably a pretty good method. If you're looking to sort of empower people and give out grants and sort of make impact, then sort of the number of grants you've given out and sort of the impact they've had is a great metric. I think DAO as a often sort of when we're writing and talking about these things, it's like we just use the word DAO as like a default for everything. When in reality, actually, there's probably like 12 subcategories that actually, over the next 10, 20 years, we'll have probably like quite well-defined, sort of names and niches inside of each of those categories. But it's just that right now it's so early that we just sort of slap one word on it and say like, that's a DAO.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Ivan.
So shameless plug, Deep DAO.io, we are working on currently a score we call the Groovy score, which is a way of looking at the health of DAOs, and it deals with we look at the governance behaviors, voting behaviors, proposal behaviors, distribution of reputation, if that's applicable, and external outreach. And how transparent is the DAO outside of its own own little echo chamber, and we will be pushing that out into our dashboards in the future. But with something, it's humorous that you mention it, just because it's right aligned with what we're up to. It's like today.
So when you construct
I would love it if you would send me over the Groovy scale.
Yep.
So
seriously, I would love it.
Almost ready.
So Ivan, I'm curious. So when you're constructing this Groovy scale, right? What's your train of thought when building something like this out, right? What are the things you prioritize? What are the things that kind of indicate red flags for you? Maybe you could tell us and walk us through that.
Sure. So at the highest level, and I tend to be kind of a systems level thinker, and having developed analytics systems for different companies in the past and stuff, you have to kind of think of like what data can be known. And then what are the business questions that are trying to be answered. So here we're thinking about what can be known about a DAO, what behaviors are obvious about a DAO, or that we can kind of interpret from the shadow that's cast, right? If you don't have the direct data, sometimes you have its shadow. And so in thinking of that, we kind of broke DAOs into a couple sets of a couple classes of behavior, and those classes are how engaged are people in voting? Because right now when you think about what a DAO can do, or what you can do within a DAO, you can make proposals, you can vote, you can you can join, and you can try and influence to get other people to vote and to make proposals and so forth. And that's kind of where we're at. You can create products and just distribute that and stuff, but at the core, it's the governance piece is proposing and governing and governing through voting in soft and hard influence. So what we look at is, again, the proposal, how active are these DAOs, and then are the proposals actually being voted on? And there are some issues, you can make the arguments, well, nobody's voting right now because gas prices are so high. And I'm assuming that those problems are going to be, we weren't designing the scale to be completely gas price neutral, but which would be very, very difficult, even more difficult than it is already. But But really what we're looking at is, kind of voting behavior, proposal behavior, membership, how is reputation distributed? So like from a decentralization point of view, if everybody, or if 3 people have the voting power of everyone else in a large DAO, you could see that as problematic. And that might not be, whether you want to call it healthy or, you can put your own name on it. But we would consider that, probably not the most decentralized system. But we also do recognize that full distribution, fair distribution is different than equal distribution. And people who have been around longer should that's fine. It's fine to have a long tail. It's fine to have a lot of new members. That could be very popular. A DAO could become very popular, and that could totally throw the reputation, the reputation curve into a strange shape. So we do take that into account. But really, what we're looking at is distribution of reputation, voting behavior, proposal behavior, and kind of external outreach.
Okay, gotcha. And Marco, when we're talking about DevDAO, what do you guys measure to determine that, okay, DevDAO is actually working the way it's supposed to operate?
There's several metrics. One would be adoption. The purpose of the DevDAO is to create the templates for the infrastructures to build better DAOs. The mission is purely about decentralization, which when you think about it is funny that representing a company that is actually a company, so therefore very centralized. But the purpose of that company was that we would set it up first to represent the DevDAO in all matters that are not workable in current legal frameworks, while we are at the same time lobbying to develop the frameworks that allow people to operate DAOs autonomously without having to have a jurisdiction. So adoption would be one of our measures of how many people are using. For example, Ivan was mentioning a bunch of issues with the reputation method of voting, and we have designed a reputation system developed by Craig Kelleher and Wolf Kahl, the St. Thomas University, who are both members of the DAO. And you can go on to Medium and you can see all the articles about how it works, and there's a book coming out about it shortly. And I'm happy to work with you, Ivan, if you want to understand how
Absolutely.
It works. But it's a way for making sure that nobody gets too much power, while the people who put in the effort, do their jobs, and support and grow the value of the DAO, receive a greater portion of the rewards out of the DAO and have a louder voice.
Okay.
And we've Monte Carlo tested it. It doesn't seem to be any way to break it. So that's one of the products that the DevDAO will be releasing to the world, because everything will be open sourced in the DevDAO. And we're calling it the MVPR right now, Minimum Viable Protocol Requirements for DAOs. And it's about getting it out there and getting people to use it, which is why I would love to see the Groovy KPI scale, because we could probably integrate that into that to have a way of both how you participate with the DAO, and then also how you can look at a dashboard and see how your participation rates versus everybody else's.
Cool.
Or maybe versus your DAO versus other DAOs, which would be a really awesome thing to have. And the more people who sort of look at our product and say, yeah, that works. It saves me 6 months of wrangling with lawyers and accountants and idealists. And there's my starting point. I can just pick this up, plop it in place, and now we can develop a community that supports the DAO and the mission of the DAO.
Okay. So that brings up an interesting point, Marco, because you talked about making sure people not having too much power and too much control, right? And from what I've seen and what other people have seen, people are, I guess, organizations, they're kind of being formed like plutocracies where the governance is controlled by people who possess the greater amount of wealth, right? How do you actually combat that? How do you prevent whales from just accumulating all these governance tokens, right? And actually incentivizing people to make proposals, to create votes, as opposed to just treating it as like a pump and dump. So I guess there's two questions here, right? So how do you avoid plutocracies, and how do you incentivize people to act in the right direction, to actually participate in votes and not just buy and sell?
If
Right, and this is one of the things you have to be careful of. Go ahead.
Yeah. If I can jump in on that, I mean, I think like realistically, like most DAOs of the future will be plutocracies through some way or another, right? Through you either put in the most money or you put in the most time and work, which is then translated to money. But I think what's certainly looking at, MetaCartel Ventures, which I think manages a little over 5 mil now. MetaCartel has given out sort of maybe $1 million grants to Metagamma Delta, DX DAO as well. I think you can sort of look in all these communities, and literally every single one is much more of a meritocracy than the plutocracy, in the on-chain voting would suggest. Just because you have a bunch of DAO shares, okay, sure, you can, press a button and you can vote. But actually, if you put out a good idea, you can have 1 share, right? You can have 0 shares in the DAO. If you have a better idea, definitely part of mine, I'm sure a lot of the philosophies here, is realistically, the best idea wins, right? I couldn't care less how many DAO shares or how many tokens you have. If you have a better idea, that is the idea we're going to go with. And I think that's been a really big part of, certainly there's going to be a lot of plutocracy, like elements that will continue to develop. But I think one thing that is a real win is that a lot of these DAOs, almost all of them that I've interacted with them, have been much more meritocratic, merit-based, idea-based.
Meritocratic.
Yeah.
Got you. So I guess a follow-up question.
I agree. That happens.
So, go ahead. Go ahead, Marco.
I was just going to answer your question, which was how do you break the connection between money and merit? And we've gone down this path on several different fronts. We're working with a separate project that is building a new type of the DAO, one that is a little different, and using the same MVPR constructs. And that one, because it's an investment fund, really was what it is. It's an investment fund. It is, in fact, cash weighted. You can't. That's what you do, right? The rich people in the network get a higher weight on what gets into the deal flow than the people with a little bit of money. And that's okay, because in order to get into it, they have to commit to invest in it. So if they're investing their hard-earned cash in it, the little guys want to follow. Right? Yeah. That kind of makes sense from a fund management. When you're talking about anything sort of outside of, the trading the markets kind of model, and you're going to things like managing communities for betterment, that's where you don't want the rich people to have any more weight in the marketplace than the poor people. You want the people with the best ideas to be bubbling to the top, not the people. And that's what we did in the Dev DAO with the MVPR. It doesn't matter how many tokens you own in Ether or whatever. When you come into the Dev DAO, you have to be voted in by the existing crew who say, yes, this person can bring value to the DAO. And then once you're in, your value contribution to the DAO is tracked. And the longer you're there, the higher your reputation will get. But bearing in mind that everybody's reputation rises over time as long as they participate. The question is, it does a lot of this, right? Someone's up a little bit more this week and next week. And the people who don't participate, flatline. So their merit becomes insignificant because everybody else is climbing and the guy who does nothing just sits there.
And DXDAO works similarly. They separate the financial token, DXD, from the governance power, which is reputation.
Got you. Interesting.
That's one of the nice things about CasperLabs. Because their new ecosystem for smart contracts, they have weighted keys. So you don't have to actually create another token to handle governance. You can do your reputation scoring using weighted keys on the addresses of the accounts that are participating, and then just have one token for your finance in this case. Got you.
So what you guys are saying, so there's governance models basically that you guys are implementing that separates the price from the voting right? So is that the ideal structure for DAOs down the line, or will there be other systems in place that might fit in a much better format to make decisions based off a use case, I guess, scenario? How do you guys envision that?
I think it really depends on, again, what is your DAO? What's the purpose of your DAO? What are you all about? The idea that a token is necessary, some valuation token is kind of only works for certain use cases, right? A community DAO may not have any use for any kind of they want to do things. Their capital is in action, and deployment rather than in holding some goofy ERC 20, whatever that means. I'm thinking like my neighbor who has no clue what we're talking about here. But to be accessible, and I think that DAOs will be accessible in the future. They don't necessarily need, one size does not fit all. Mm-hmm. It depends on what the culture and the purpose of that DAO are. To the DX DAO model, which I'm also a member of DX DAO, I really like their model of breaking out the governance token individually. But what's interesting is that as DXD, the token itself had risen in the recent run-up, and of course it's dropped now, but all of a sudden all these token holders started wanting to have some say. Now, they didn't want to make proposals, they didn't want to do anything, they didn't want to do the work, they wanted to show up with the money and push a button and get rid of our bonding curve, or whatever their issue was. And it was interesting because I don't know, I mean, John of course knows way more about the drama than I do. I was not that much tuned into it, but there were volumes written about it. But it seemed like maybe one solution was to give those monetary token holders some voting power, but like a restricted amount. I mean, I know that was one of the proposals, and that would allow them to have a voice so that they weren't voiceless, but also they didn't have to be in the midst of all the political aspects, so they could play a particular role, which is an important role, without taking over. I had this like fantasy of somebody doing a flash loan of the governance token and then like coming in and like forcing some crazy some crazy vote, and then like jumping out of it, or borrowing from some whale or some like Binance borrowing, and then pushing some something. I mean, that might happen with Uniswap right now, right? Because Binance.
You're giving people ideas, Ivan.
I think it's a very valid concern. Like, liquid governance is vulnerable governance, right? Like, if you can buy control, that's an avenue to attack, right? And
be careful.
If I mean, it's blockchain, right? It's a whatever, code is law, and if you just need to get enough token by buying it to execute some kind of economic attack or exploit, or I think there's so many potential ways that these systems could be compromised by a governance attack, and I think we're very, very early, and it could get very interesting very quickly over the next couple of years.
So that's like a segue into something else, right? So how do you actually create accountability within a DAO, right? For example, if funds are mismanaged, how do people come together and I guess punish the person who mismanaged the fund? Is there a system in place like that? How do you guys kind of look at that?
Well, and this is something which was
you don't allow people to control the funds.
Okay.
Yeah,
the DAO
definitely one
funds,
solution.
not people.
But there's still a lot of situations where you need people to actually, they need to buy something or interact with something, or they need money in the account, or they could just waste time, or whatever other version. And I think what's really interesting, especially at the moment, but like is that like decentralized HR, right? Decentralized human management. It's all good and well having a bunch of people around the world with different levels of expectations and different outcomes they're looking for inside of one DAO. But what happens when things go wrong, right? And sort of how does that conversation take place? Because it's not like a traditional company, right? It's not like a traditional organization where you sort of walk up to Karen, who you've known for 13 years, and say, oh, actually, like, there's been a problem, something went wrong. Instead, this is someone on the other side of the universe that could have a lot of control or could not. And I think like the way that we handle these, I would say that there's been very little, there's been sort of under 10 use cases of actually how to work out these like decentralized community problems in the whole of blockchain ecosystem. So definitely that's something that I think is like, we need more sort of time and energy, and actually more social, the builders are super important, and building ETH 2.0, I am very on board with, but more of the social scientists. I mean, I studied philosophy, right? And now I find myself doing all this stuff, but like more people that are like in the arts and actually are able to communicate through these problems and don't sort of like get to a brick wall of communication and of interpersonal skills and just sort of fall on themselves. And, oh, but it's a DAO. Well, there's people here, it's a real thing.
Yeah. And Nich, I see you nodding your head a lot. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this plays into like what I've come to find is like, just because DAOs are kind of flat and leaderless doesn't mean that no one's held accountable for anything, right? So in Meta Gamma Delta, during our first meeting that we were a part of, we were just in the first meeting we established roles, and Meta Gamma Delta is kind of based off of this Greek life like sorority meme, where you know, it was supposed to just be like
that's the first thing that came to mind.
Parody sorority, right, where we have different Greek letters and things like that. But our first, yeah, but actually the Greek life meme served as a really useful blueprint on how we were going to hold each other accountable for things, so that things actually get done. So in sororities and fraternities, you have all these roles like social chair, you know, PR chair, you know, administrative chair. So during our first meeting, we kind of self-selected ourselves into, it was only a few of us, but we self-selected into one of these roles. And that was basically the person who was unofficially in charge of that, so that when we agree to do something and it doesn't get done, you kind of know who to kind of go and talk to. So I think it's a really nice way to execute on whatever you want to execute on towards your mission, right? And in terms of on-chain governance, that's kind of the formalization process of the decisions and the things we wanted to do with the common pool of resources. But there's a lot of off-chain elements, like James alluded to, that requires the interpersonal aspect as well, of like talking to people, of, you know, getting people's opinions on things, and just having that communication be transparent to the DAO, if not to the public. And yeah, so roles and accountability, I think is one way of managing decentralized HR.
Okay.
So when something goes wrong, then you can kind of find the best person to kind of step up and
the idea
replace
of
that.
having these kind of roles and responsibilities is, you know, a lot of times when we think about a DAO, we think, okay, here's this software system that's going to solve all of our problems, right? And as I mentioned before, like the human side is messy and present. It's, you know, only half of it. And in this case, we're going to round down. You know, we're going to go down to zero. If you only pay attention to the software, you're in trouble. I think that a key part of how a DAO makes decisions is by establishing culture and establishing ways of working. And like early on in your, you know, when it's just a benevolent dictator or a small cabal or junta, you know, getting together and having some ideas and having like methodology, like this is who we are, this is why we are, this is how we do things. Things that can change over time, but that at least puts down an idea, a credo, a set of mottos, an early idea of what the culture actually is. And then decision making comes so much more easily, because we have a problem. You can go to that and you can say, okay, have we already solved this with our amendments? You know, with the way that we think about these things, instead of having everything be like a brand new, problem that needs to be solved, you say, okay, this is how we've done this in the past. If that needs to be changed, totally cool. But it also takes a lot of cognitive load off of us to look and see and that idea, that ethos has already been defined. Like, our purpose is to make as much money as possible. Cool. Does this decision make as much money as possible? No, don't do it. Yes, do it. You know, that kind of stuff. And also the people you attract and those kinds of things. Who wants to join a DAO? If you have a decent culture defined, then you can maintain that. And you can hopefully pull and bring them, have that strong magnet of like-minded individuals. The danger of a weak culture is that interlopers on purpose or accidentally can kind of steer your system. And you see this with clubs and groups and whatever they are all the time. Like, if it has a weak culture, it can get hijacked. And then suddenly it's like, this isn't the DAO that I joined. And and then it's and the software didn't save me, damn it.
Yeah. So what you're
disappointed.
Yeah. So what you're kind of talking about, that there still needs to be some type of centralized leader or some type of centralized ethos in a decentralized organization. Because if you think about it, like, a lot of people, a lot of organizations are used to being led with a central figure, right? Giving them a foundation, right? So, but how you're proposing it, that there's still that role still needs to be in place in DAOs, at least at the genesis of the DAO, to set the foundation for the remaining life of the DAO. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the research that I've done in the past is in organizational psychology. So, thinking about, how do you retain people? How do you attract them? How do they feel supported in the organization? All this kind of fun, squishy stuff.
Yeah.
It's key to getting things done, is to having people have a common purpose. And we are pack animals. We think in terms of our clan. I mean, whether it's politically or with our family or whatever. And we understand ourselves by how we're different from others, frankly. So by defining these things, it brings us together in order to make, hopefully good decisions that are in the interest of the group. And I think, again, DAOs allow for that coordination across, across the world, which is beautiful. And we have to make sure that we recognize that the human element is still a key piece of this, and it's not. We can't expect the software to save us.
Right.
And when we think about proposals, I'll finish on this, and then I'll be quiet for a little while. But when we think about proposals, there's kind of two kinds of proposals. There's a signaling proposal, and then there's kind of a monetary or reputation-based proposal generally in most DAOs, and that is, okay, I will do this for this much money or this much token, or I think somebody should do this for this amount of reputation or whatever. That's kind of programmatic, no problem, right? And the signaling proposal is, I think we should change the way we think about this thing, or I think we should get rid of the bonding curve in DX DAO, whatever. Like, that's not something that the software can look at and go, oh, I need to go and do this thing. It requires humans, again, to plug in or unplug or burn or do whatever they need to do to execute that. And that's where things really in DAOs today, I think, get really messy. It's the simple one is, hey, I did this thing, give me some reputation and some some ETH, and we're good. And everybody says yes or no, and they go home, and very clean. Or the rest of them, the signaling proposals is where things get pretty dicey.
Okay, and really quick, I just want to throw a question to the audience. I want to engage who has actually submitted a proposal and casted a vote in a DAO based off who's watching right now. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you've submitted a proposal, and throw me like a beer emoji if you've voted before. I'm just curious to see what the activity level is. Anyways, outside of the speakers, James, you were starting to comment and engage with the audience in the chat. You're saying how almost all organizational governance was built before the internet, and that there's plenty to learn from these historical governance systems. Can you tell us more about that and what you mean exactly, right? Because I feel like sometimes people think like they need to reinvent the wheel, when in reality, there's a lot of governance structures that actually might work just as well in computer-run and program-run societies. I think I lost James for a minute, but I don't know if it's me or him. Can you hear us?
He seems to be paused.
I can hear you.
Oh, hold on. Okay, go for it. Oh, we lost him. All good.
No, he's gone.
Anybody else want to take
He'll
the
be back.
question, John? I'd love to hear how Level K kind of approaches it. Do you guys try to reinvent the wheel, or have you like done a deep dive into history and seen what governance structures have worked best?
What's the question, like what is there to learn from existing organizational structures? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of stuff in crypto, right, like where it is kind of approaching finance again, and a lot of this stuff has been done or is just kind of being now done on blockchain, whereas there's like analogs in the real world, or it's just been done in the real world. And yeah, I mean, corporate governance is like a long history, and it's like a deep field, and a lot has been done and established in all different places. So yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to look at how our corporations run today, how could that apply to DAOs, and what can be borrowed. But in terms of, I do think, to the point of this was before the internet, I do think having like internet native corporations is a little bit of a different beast. And
right.
Yeah, and I think being able to, just the ability to coordinate globally, without leaving your home is something very different. And then blockchain adds this whole new kind of Lego, if you want to borrow that terminology, right? Like where you can now play with trust and then start building on top of that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how traditional, what will emerge. I don't think we should just try to copy traditional structures. I think we should, we should keep our eyes open, not be ignorant of the fact that a lot of this stuff has been exercised and debated and tried before, but that we should approach it with kind of fresh eyes and see what we can come up with.
Sure. James, I'd kind of love to hear your take.
Yeah, I
You
don't
were
think
Yeah.
kind of engaging with the
DAOs
audience.
are going to. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I got the question. Hopefully, my internet's a little bit fixed now. I mean, yeah, I think that like that is the big part of it. Is like, I mean, certainly I'm from a generation where like, the internet was sort of introduced as I grew up, and now like have found myself, entire professional career sort of pointed towards Ethereum and DAOs, and I will not admit to be, a huge understander of, all of the weight of sort of government and over eternity, right? I'm sure there's been a heap of it, but I just sort of don't care. I'm just sort of like, obviously, sometimes you'll get into a roadblock and you'll find a different medium. But, when we're in a completely decentralized world using the internet for coordinate, looking at sort of, okay, these are the humans and these are the way the humans are interacting. And these are the on-chain, sort of like crypto economic incentives. And then sort of just slamming them together in like 100 different ways and 100 different experiments. That I think is actually better learning than trying to sort of look at, historical research from 300 years ago on how to govern organizations, and then sort of trying to slot that into this, DAO crypto internet world. It's, if we have to go back and test every previous theory, that's probably just going to take longer than just trying to run every single experiment we can inside of this space.
Right.
I think one of the exciting promises of DAOs too is to let human organization achieve greater scale than previously done. Like with, I think the firm is how you maybe categorize like what we're kind of operating under right now. If we can achieve like greater coordination and at greater scales than ever before in history, then that opens up new possibilities for what humanity can achieve. And yeah, I think these like tools that blockchain are giving us around incentives are opening up doors to be able to achieve this, right? Instead of having to have a military-like hierarchical structure to run everything we do, can we set things up and with incentives and rules that allow things to scale in a more decentralized way?
Okay, very cool. Marco, I know you wanted to add something as
Brings us
well.
to the crisis of the commons. Yeah, I mean, I understand the debate between going back and going forward. If you go early governance, you see there's been attempts, at tribal hunter-gatherer kind of governance. Sometimes there's a chief, sometimes there's a matriarch, sometimes it's just the community governs itself, and they recognize expertise within the community for governance. And so some people get to make decisions more unilaterally when it's medical or scouting for the next place to move, that kind of thing. And we're just taking this forward. What blockchain lets us do is take it global. So we literally could have a DAO with 7.7 billion people on it, not on Ethereum. But the technology exists today where you probably could do a DAO with 7.7 billion people in it, in terms of you do a vote once a day, for example. And you could have universal governance to that degree where as long as you only made one decision a day. The problem isn't in the technology supporting it. The problem is, as many of you have pointed out already, and it's even that. Think about the idea of incentive and asking yourself, why would I want to pay somebody to make a decision that will inevitably have an effect on the entire human race? I don't want to pay them for it. I want them to care enough to actually make the decision to vote, to say, it's important that I say, I think X is better than Y. And this is the crisis of the commons, because while the tools provide us with this awesome trustless environment where we say, if I cast a vote, I know it's cast. I know that everyone can go check that I cast it. And I know that the total will always be the total. No one can mess with it. That's great. So you've solved the cheating post-vote problem, right? And you can solve, we've got lots of people have models for how you do this, the Sybil attack problem as well. But once you've solved those two, all you've done is create the machine that lets you know what the collective will is. You have to have the input, and that's the hardest thing of all. And this comes right back to social psychology. How do you get people to want to commit what they believe and they think is the right thing to do to this effort? And how do you get people to commit to learning enough about what's going on to make an informed decision? And I mean, I call it the crisis of the commons. I'm sure they've got another name. Ben Franklin's famous quote always comes to mind, you want to see what's wrong with democracy? talk to an average voter.
I love it.
What do you do? Right? But that's where the social psychologists and the artists of the world are. Boy, do we need more of them.
Yeah.
Because we've got to figure out, how do you get people to realize that what they say in these DAOs or possibly global governance environments really matters? Because I'm 1 in 7.7 billion votes. Yes, but if everybody thought that way, then nothing would happen.
I hear you. So I want to move on to
That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I want to move on to the QA for a minute because we only have so much time left. This question comes from Jamari, okay? And typically how it works, I'll just throw the question out there and whoever wants to jump on it, go for it. It's yours, okay? So what voting and consensus mechanism do you find most appropriate for voting on core protocol changes and features versus supportive actions and features?
MVPR, the one that we're using for the Dev DAO. Next.
MVPR, okay. Anybody else?
So just trying to understand. So the question is, what voting mechanisms are better for core protocol changes versus what voting mechanisms are better for
supportive actions,
features or supportive actions. So core protocol almost to me implies that we're talking about something like a blockchain itself, like Ethereum or Bitcoin. And I mean, in that case, I don't think like on-chain governance is particularly good. Like I think the way that it's kind of gone makes sense that it should not be done on-chain. It's too risky. And then, but if we're talking like, I'll take the DXDAO lens because that's what I'm involved in. Like, I mean, a core, I think the same governance mechanism is kind of used across the board so that we can, you know, adapt, you know, key aspects of the product or even, you know, the particular plugins and connections that DAOs has to other parts of Ethereum, all the way down to like, you know, should somebody get paid $1,000 to do a marketing campaign or something. So I think maybe that answers the question.
No,
That's
awesome. Awesome. We can move on to the next one. So when do you guys imagine that the first fully decentralized autonomous country will form? Okay, this is kind of like, we're thinking like down.
So people have been talking about legal structures a bit.
Isn't that Lieberland?
What's that?
Lieberland. Aren't they already formed?
Lieberland? What's Lieberland?
I thought they got invaded.
Okay.
Did they?
I
think he got arrested.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That they tried to form in this little patch somewhere, and they got something happened to them. If maybe they survived it and established themselves regardless, but I believe that they attempted to do so and then were quickly destroyed.
This is a digital country,
I heard
right?
they got accepted to the UN.
What?
No, it's actually got land.
Yeah,
Really?
these guys have land, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I guess we're living through it right now. 2020 is when the first DAO country will form. All right.
I could see an early Ethereum backer buying an island and doing an experiment. I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think it's been talked about. There was talks of like, you know, college campuses and sort of grabbing one of them or like an island and just like, you know, spending like, it wouldn't be, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but, you know, like it wouldn't be that much in terms of like, you know, shitcoin value to spend, you know, like $100 million or whatever on like an island or like a piece of land and then like run the experiment pretty successfully, I think, like, prove stuff out.
All right. If we have an early Ethereum backer watching us right now, you have my full support and I'll be there. I would
flip that around a little bit. I think that this is an extension of the internet, but DAOs are going to challenge what the notion of a country is, right? So I mean, but I like how we went immediately to land, right? We were like, oh, there's already this island somewhere that somebody bought. It's like, well, who needs land, right? As long as people are coordinating under like a like cause, I think that's sort of maybe the more important thing, right? But yeah.
Well, the problem is that unless you're rich, you need somewhere to stand, right? Unless you have a boat or an aircraft, you don't land.
Well, yeah, I'm not
somewhere to
suggesting.
stand, and as long as that exists, we can't get rid of land.
But the notion of a country is defined by like borders, right, on land, where maybe that DAOs change that a little bit.
Well, we could do what China did. We could just find a shoal and fill it with landfill until it's above water, and then say, boom, that's our country.
Boom. Someone make it happen. All right.
Just like
Next
that.
question. What are some new ideas for DAOs that you guys are most excited about? And I kind of want to hear from everyone. So we can start with James, go to John, Marco, Nish, and end with Ivan.
Yeah, so I mean, I think from my perspective, what excites me a lot at the moment is like kind of the step that we're taking from, like again, we got PTS DAO, a couple of years ago. It took a wee while to recover. Then sort of, I think, start of last year, that really started to take an uptick again, looking at DAO Stack or Moloch or any of these sort of DAO structures that, last year we literally went from sort of tens to sort of hundreds over last year. And obviously this year that line's continuing up. And I think, looking forward in the future to the sort of the concept of these DAOs participating as more like Web 2 companies, right? So sort of being able to own a product, right? And sort of raise some money from a product and give out shares to people contributing on the product and build that product up, right? Different communities, looking at corporate governance and how corporate governance right now is basically like a scam for the most part. And sort of how can we re-engineer that with a lot of this, liquid governance or whatever else. And then finally, I guess sort of that, what we're starting to see at the moment with the likes of Compound, Aave, a number of these protocols in the token world that are sort of starting to build in these governance mechanisms into the token, and thinking about how that can sort of, first of all, I think empower, like I was saying earlier, empower the incredibly smart, genius sitting in Poland that's never involved himself in any or herself in any cryptocurrency related matters, and then sees some random forum post and is like, oh shit, I have the right idea, I have the answer, and sort of opening up that governance platform, so it's not that if you're a shareholder of Microsoft, then you apply to be a consultant at Microsoft, then you work at Microsoft for 3 years, and then you get up the corporate ladder,
Right.
and then you can make decisions, right? And sort of restructuring that entire thing.
Okay. Good. Okay. How about you, John?
Sure. Like, I guess there's maybe two ways to interpret this question. One maybe is that what are like new DAOs coming out that are exciting, or like what are these DAOs doing that's exciting, versus like maybe just new ideas about DAOs. So I'll take the latter first. And I think just iterating on how governance is done, I think, is exciting, and I think new is relative here. But like I like how DXDAO has this 2-token model, like this reputation for governance, and DXD is the financial token, but I think it's incomplete. Ivan alluded to it earlier, but like DXD holders don't have much of a say, and that's kind of problematic. So I'm kind of excited to see where DXDAO, and I think other DAOs in the community will be facing similar problems. So it could be other, where the whole community goes in terms of, coming up with new approaches to this. Like, how do you have a meritocracy, but align it with financial stakeholders? But I kind of like this idea of almost having these two primitives, right? Primitive of financial interest and primitive of governance interest. But maybe you have to align them in a certain way to make sure that it operates well. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Mm-hmm. I don't really have a great answer for exciting DAOs coming out. I mean, I think Prime DAO is an interesting one that some of us know about here, which is coming out soon and is trying to be a prime brokerage for DeFi. So basically, how do you combine things in a way that makes it easier for the end user to navigate DeFi. So stuff like that's pretty cool.
And full disclosure, Draper, Goren, Holm, Level K, and Deep DAO, they're all part
plugging
it. Yeah, plugging in Prime DAO, right? So, and anyways, to continue the conversation, Marco.
Well, I'm obviously excited about having the Dev DAO fully launch. Which is still a few months away. We just closed the deal with CasperLabs, and I've got a couple of others in the pipeline that are coming down the pipe that we're looking forward to closing, and then we'll find ourselves hopefully in a situation where we can get everything sorted. In terms of things that are coming that I'm most interested in, I think it is the self-sovereign DAO. That's the thing that I'm really looking forward to. Well, beta testing in the next 3 to 5 months, but this is a DAO that doesn't require legal regulation, but allows you to work in the or allows you to play in the markets.
Well, Marco, I need to jump in here because DXDAO actually does not have any legal registration. Whether that's achieving what you're talking about or not, I don't know. But it doesn't have any legal registration.
Which makes me actually
You
think
also
of a
don't
new
have
question.
a
But
financial token yet.
What's it?
I mean,
Sorry?
that financial token might become a security. That's the problem, right?
Oh, I'm sure some regulatory framework would consider it a security, but I think the
maybe
question
one
is,
specific one.
the question is, do internet native
Not one that I care
organizations,
about, but
what right does a particular geographical jurisdiction have to govern or regulate an internet native organization? Right? And I mean, so the DXDAO, I'm in the United States, so if the SEC knocks on my door, I'm going to talk to them, and I will, figure out and do whatever they tell me to do. But 90% of the DXDAO is not in the United States. They're in South America, Asia, Europe, Australia. Right? They're all over the place. And why should everybody listen to what the SEC has to say? It's not very clear to me why that should be the case in the future.
only Americans should listen to what the SEC has to say. And that's great. I mean, I agree with you. But the problem is, what happens to DXDAO if the Americans in it pull out because they have to, they're told to? And this is a lot of the risk that
the rest of the members take over, and I'm sure the Ukrainians and the Argentinians are going to be a little less flustered by that. They're just going to have more power.
I love it. Mitch,
Yeah,
what are you most excited
you
about?
get a lot of American loading going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Americans miss out. I mean, that's the long and short of it. So I hope Congress wakes up and realizes that they don't want to miss out.
There you go. Mitch, what are you most excited about in terms of the future of DAOs and any projects that you see or should come in the future?
I'm very interested in seeing how different demographics of people use DAOs and this governance mechanism. So, like, for example, like we have Lex DAOs, right, which is lawyers and legal professionals. In terms of like the specific demographic that I'm excited to seeing use DAOs is creatives. So like artists, musicians. How do they? So we have. I'm in the NFT space, and we have these shared virtual spaces now, where it's currently like Decentralized or CryptoVoxels, where it's owned by one person. I would be very interested in seeing how DAOs manage a shared virtual space. So like a DAO-owned parcel on CryptoVoxels, for example, and if it's like an art collective DAO, making decisions around, what pieces of art to display, for example, for sale, and then how that revenue goes towards either the DAO or the artist or the collectors. So it's like this community of people who are passionate about one thing, and how do we create value flows around that thing, like music or art or whatever, using these new governance mechanisms. So there's obviously all these existing use cases that DAOs are being used for right now, like funding and grants and development. But I think it's a subset of what James was talking about before, which is like product-based DAOs. But the product in this case is creative works. So kind of like a decentralized
Defiant.art
record label, or
Okay.
a decentralized art brand.
What was that?
Oh,
Yeah.
like plus 100 to that. Like I totally agree. I think like that combination is going to be like incredible, like unlocking this for like musicians and artists and like this whole category, which basically right now just get fucked by like all of the structure above them. Where everyone's taking a clip, everyone's taking their money. They never have the sort of their rights are never theirs.
Yeah.
And like unlocking that whole creative side, I think like DAOs hasn't even touched yet. Well, maybe it started to, but I think that's like 100x, type of deal.
I designed an architecture to solve that exact problem 2 years ago and realized there wasn't a single platform on the planet that could support the transaction volume. And that was the only problem.
So as soon as we get to
Tron,
that level, that's why if we all use Tron, it'll be super easy. Just $10. It'll be all very safe. No, we're going to use Ethereum.
Yeah, exactly.
Nate, you gave people a lot of light bulbs in the chat. Everyone's saying great idea. So interesting to see who's going to pick that up. Are you working on that right now? Okay, there
Me?
you go.
Oh, we just lost people.
Yeah. I'm working on it's not a DAO right now, but it's basically an NFT project. So I spend a lot of time in like the metaverse and playing around with NFTs and looking at how unique digital assets can be combined with blockchain-enabled primitives like DeFi primitives and definitely the governance aspects of DAOs, especially because mine is it goes towards like public goods, right? So how do we make a decision around how public goods are funded? Yeah, but I mean NFTs and I think the metaverse is something that would get a lot. It's something that would make this entire space more diverse just because of the visceral aspect of it. Yeah, there's this project coming out which isn't exactly a DAO, but it's basically the first time where a crypto voxels parcel enables fractionalized ownership. So people who own a part of this parcel owns an ERC20, and then they're going to auction it at the end. I think this specific project is called Zoo Token, but just based on something like that, I'm very interested in how a DAO owned parcel might look like and how that would be governed.
Cool. Very cool. How about you, Ivan?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what's been talked about so far is still existing in the on the internet, on chain, etc. And what I'm more interested in at this point is where kind of DAOs meet dirt. So using these methods, but also applying them to like real life goods, like actual touchable, tangible things. And for example, ideas of that the internet kind of democratized information for us, and crypto kind of democratized access to financial stuff. DAOs kind of merge that together. So now we have information, we have access, we have the capital. We can make the capital deployments even as a somebody with just a little bit of money. And I'd love to see DAOs do things like just thinking about with a post-COVID universe that I hope to see in near future. There are going to be a lot of struggling local organizations, and what would be really cool would be to create, for example, a Portland token, and then that Portland token would invest into my favorite bars, so that I don't just have to drink online with you people. I can actually go and hang out with some humans, and and observe human behavior, in the wild.
Are we that bad, Ivan? Are we that bad?
No, I love you all. I love you all. I like variety. But what I'm seeing is, there's an opportunity for DAOs to meet dirt and to allow for people to make decisions around small investments, right, rather than it being always whales. So you could imagine a Portland token, and it's got X millions of dollars, and there's some kind of structure in place. Now I know there's a million regulatory problems with that, but dare to dream with me. The other side of that is I like to see more kind of art-oriented DAOs, art, music, etc. If we could kind of commission artists to create work and then and vote on it, could just use it. Again, it's not for making money. It's just for promoting and disseminating art out into the world. I'm kind of a sticker geek. I make my own stickers, and you'll find them around Portland if you look hard. And I was doing a project called Art for Stealing, which was putting pieces up for people to steal off the telephone poles and stuff. And I like to promote that kind of thing, and I'd like to make that go worldwide. I think that'd be really fun, and have people who are coming together with like ideas, sharing their art, voting on which ones get promoted, and then distributing that, and then having people create maybe a match of, for my interest, stickers from the sticker pack one, and then taking that out and putting it, slapping it up in Berlin, slapping it up in Madrid, and in Portland as well. Yeah. And just again, in the spirit of kind of playing and working off of each other and having a common people with same kinds of ideas. Again, there's no token model. It's not about making money. It's all about kind of, again, like DAOs meeting dirt. That's something that I'm interested in. I'm seeing a little bit of that in, I mentioned it earlier, we're seeing more off-chain type of stuff that DAOs are starting to own things. And there's no reason we can't just turn that, all the way to 100 and say, okay, what if we just forgot the financial side, and what if they start owning, weird stuff? And I look forward to exploring that niche.
That's very creative. I love that. Yeah, Marco, go ahead.
I mean, to let sort of run with this idea. I mean, and then, by the way, I haven't done drugs since, it's been 40 years since I did drugs. Anyway, I see a world where you walk through life, and as you meet somebody, right, and you decide you like them, they're your friend, that's a new DAO that just forms without you even doing anything about it. And then you buy a product, you buy an iPhone, for example, and boom, you're in actually a DAO that is part of several other DAOs, the cell phone DAO, the Apple DAO, the iPhone particular brand number you've got DAO, and you're just in them because of the fact that you have interacted with that particular piece of the world, and you are now in there for as long as you have that product, that relationship, whatever it is. And when governance questions come up within any of those things that you're interconnected with, you're asked. And you can choose to not participate or participate. And as you participate, your personal reputation rises, as well as your reputation within any particular environment you're interacting with. And all this happens, it's all done in code. And it's a way that it gets past some of the commons problems. Right? Because nobody's going to be who's like just a kid who's just walking around with an iPhone and an Xbox isn't going to get asked questions about governance. But a guy with a passport who's traveling the world will get asked about state level governance, because he's obviously old enough and he's got experience and he's probably reading newspapers or news feeds, whatever it is. And I think that would be the utopian way of where we could head with it. Do we get there? I don't know.
Okay, I think it's a good point to kind of end off. I think this was a great discussion. You guys really ended with really creative ideas that I thank you for. It was great having each of you on here and discussing decentralized autonomous organizations. And before we kind of break off into networking, I'd love to kind of hear from each of you where we can follow up with you. If the audience has questions, where they can find you on Twitter, where they can find your projects. So Ivan, let's start with you, and then we'll go from Nish, Marco, John, and James.
Sure. DeepDAO.io is we can check out our DAO dashboard, and that's only the beginning. We're going to be adding quite a bit more stuff. If you have DAO questions, you can reach out to me directly. IvanThinking@gmail.com. My Twitter is Ivan_thinking. I think that's about it. You can find me on Telegram as well. I hang out in the DXDAO channels, as well as all over the place. And there I am also known as Ivan Thinking.
Nice. Thank you. Mitch?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm at Nichanan, Nichanan. I'll link it in the chat. And then Metagamma Delta is on Twitter and also metagammadelta.com. And my NFT project is spiritcreatures.io. So I'll link them all in the chat.
I'm trying to come up with another Greek triplet, but I can't. You guys can find me at block-blocks.blox on the end there, and the second one, .com. You can connect me through there. My LinkedIn profile is in the chat. If you're going to connect with me, please tell me why, because I get asked to connect all the time, and if there's not a good reason, I just ignore them. Or, unless they're stupid rich, I will accept Bill Gates. That's it. And of course, the ETA and the DevDAO, our web presence, should be up sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks. As I said, we just closed the first round of fundraising, so it's going to take us a while to spin everything up. And definitely, we're looking for people to come in and contribute and bring their expertise. And we're not just looking for coders. We're also looking for lawyers and policy people and philosophers who want to come in and help us structure the optimal solutions for DAOs that we can then ship out to the rest of the DAO community.
I love it. Awesome. John?
Posted in chat on Twitter. My handle is JPK Cambridge, like the city Cambridge. And then DXDAO you can find on its website, dxdao.eth. And then .link is a good service to use. You can also go to ENS domains just with MetaMask in your browser. And then on that site, you can link to the chats and governance platforms, etc., and the forum as well. So it's called developer chat, but I realize it's like kind of not the right name for it. That links to the Keybase, and that's where kind of the more in-depth kind of product discussions and engagement happens. So if you're interested in joining DXDAO, I would recommend you click on that developer chat link and introduce yourself.
Nice.
In Keybase.
Thank you. And James, where can we find you and learn more about your project and whatnot?
Yeah, so on Twitter, it's at Blockchain James, one word. And then in terms of where to find me, I mean, I guess Fire Eyes is where I spend a lot of my time. You got to use the emoji keyboard to try and work out how to find that. At MetaCartel Ventures, Metagamma Delta, all of sort of wider DAO ecosystem that you really try and DXDAO, I don't know, try and hang out in all DAO magic. So should be able to find me.
Cool. And you guys can find Draper Goren Holm at Draper Goren Holm. And we have our flagship event happening next week, October 6th and 7th, LA Blockchain Summit, 2 days, 5 stages, thousands of attendees. It's going to be a kick-ass event, and I highly recommend all of you guys to attend. We're having a DeFi track, we're having a digital securities track, a research and innovation track, and I feel like I'm missing out on a couple in addition to the main stage. I'm missing out on one last one. But anyways, guys, come. It's going to be a lot of fun. I hope to see all of you there. And thank you to the speakers for kicking ass on this awesome panel discussion about DAOs. You guys are forever thanked, and I wish you another cheers for all that you are placed, and we hope to see you soon. And guys, again, next week, there will be no Blockchain and Booze. We're going straight to LA Blockchain Summit. All right, so mark that down. Guys, thank you so much. And before we break off into the networking session, make sure you have your cameras on, make sure you have your microphones on. What's going to happen if you're new to Blockchain and Boost, we're basically going to disperse to all these really cool, colorful tables where you'll be able to, bounce around from chair to chair and meet people from all over the world and continue the conversation. All right, so cameras on, mics on, let's do it. We'll see you next week on LA Blockchain Summit. Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Got him.